Chapter 13, The Suspect. All Might stared out the window from his spot on the hospital bed, going over everything that happened in his fight against All for One the other day. He defeated the villain, but in turn he found out that Tomura Shigaraki is Nana Shimura's grandson. To top it all off, the League escaped and All for One revealed that Apotheosis has some big plan in the works. It was a good thing he decided to conserve his strength. Otherwise he might have been in trouble, or worse, the public could have seen his true form. Luckily none of things happened and he walked away from that fight with some broken bones and a concussion. However, he pushed his power past the limit once again and now his time frame was reduced even more. He figured he probably had half an hour at most in his strong form. The whole incident hammered in the fact that he still needed to find a successor to pass on the power of One for All. There were some candidates, but the ones in Class 1A that Toshinori was interested in were too young and inexperienced. None of them had the heart of a true hero that he was looking for. So he started looking outside of that class to the third years. Moping about All Might, Shota Aizawa said, interrupting his thoughts. That's out of character for you. And being concerned for me is out of character for you, Toshinori said, turning to face his fellow teacher who entered the room. So how was your day? He asked, finally noticing the other was dressed in a white shirt, tie, and actually looked clean cut for once. Going home to tell parents about the new dorms we're moving the students into, by myself, the man sighed in exhaustion, letting his hair fall down. How do you think it went? Guess I owe you a drink, All Might chuckled. The next day, Izuku smirked as he watched the fight on his dorm room computer. He mostly just wanted to see All for One's power. Tomura liked to brag about how strong Sensei was, but he had never seen it until now, that is. So this is what you get with the power to steal any quirk you want? He mused as he poured notes on everything he learned from the video into his book. What a great and dangerous ability. Izuku had to wonder about the power of All for One though. With the ability to steal quirks, why didn't he just take All Might's quirk? Perhaps he needed to be in direct physical contact for a period of time, and of course the hero is not going to sit back and let that happen when he can Texas smash him if he tries. His phone suddenly rang, stopping his research. Looking down at the screen he spotted Kirajiri's number. Hello, Izuku answered. Did you know that wasn't Kirajiri's voice? It sounded like a dangerously calm Shigaraki. Tomura-san? He asked. Did you know? The pale-haired man on the other end said slowly. No, what? You need to be specific. Izuku wasn't expecting a call like this. Did you know what would happen? Ah, so that's what you wanted. You're the goddamn strategist. You always seem to know how things will play out, he growled at him. Did you know how all this would go? Did you know that All Might would come? That Sensei would be defeated and captured? Did you? Tomura screamed at him. Izuku frowned, wondering if he should tell the truth or not. To be honest, I didn't expect a raid on our base so quickly, he lied smoothly. And where were you? I was in my lab working when I heard a noise outside. I poked my head out and saw the heroes attacking the Nomu factory. I figured the same must have been happening at the bar. Izuku continued to spin his story. While I was frantically deleting computer files and burning evidence, Sensei appeared, told me to flee and promised to erase my lab. Now that part was true. The secret to lying was always sprinkle in a bit of truth. So don't go assuming I left you all behind to your fate. Tomura remained silent for a moment before speaking. Where are you now? Tomura seemed to buy his story. My school dormitory, Izuku answered. I'll have Kirajiri create a warp gate for you, the green-haired boy sighed as they hit this little snag that he knew was coming. I'm terribly sorry, but I'm going to have to decline. What? Tomura growled out. We need to go our separate ways for now, Tomura, Izuku explained. You don't need me or Sensei anymore. I have my own plans and goals that I need to follow. So you're abandoning us? Shigaraki shouted at him. After everything we did for you? No. Think of this as me taking some time off. We'll see each other again, but I'm too close to finishing what I started. I can't help you right now, Izuku apologized once again. Just what are you up to? You'll see soon enough, Izuku chuckled darkly. Tell Dabi and Toga I said hello, and with that he hung up. Izuku then went back to taking notes on the quirks All for One and One for All while rewatching the video of its two wielders battling it out. He found both of these quirks very fascinating. 1 week later. So do you think my costume could be lighter? Ochako asked. Come on. Give me a challenge, Mei Hatsune laughed. How about a weapon then? Like a staff of some kind, Ochako explained while making a bat swinging motion with her arms. A handheld weapon would benefit her greatly and maybe give her the edge she needed. Maybe it can have like a grapple tether to pull people back down that are affected by your quirk. May smiled, getting an awesome idea. Oh, I know somebody who made an awesome grapple weapon, let's ask him about it. Achako wondered while the pink-haired girl went to her computer and opened up a video call. A few minutes later and the screen opened up, revealing big green eyes on a cute familiar freckled face. May, you kind of caught me at a bad time. Izuku appeared to be moving around using his phone to continue this video chat. Are you at Geonosis still? May asked. This is the last week of my internship before I go back to school, so I'm trying to cram as many projects as I can into the limited amount of time I have. He smiled at her awkwardly. So I'm a tad busy right now. Midoriya. Achako exclaimed, finally recognizing the boy on the screen. Eureka. We meet again. He was glad to see she was alright. For a while Izuku was worried that Toga may have seriously hurt her when he sent her to retrieve a blood sample during the training camp attack. I heard what happened at the training camp. Are you alright? I'm fine, she smiled at him. Just a few scratches. He knew she got blown up by Bakugo during that attack, so she must have been playing it off as not to worry him. How sweet. You two met before? May asked with a bit of a suggestive tone. It was before summer break. We ran into each other at the mall, Achako quickly explained with a blush. I recognized her from the sports festival and wanted to say hello and get a blood sample, which he refused to do at the time. So what do you need from me? He gave May his number in case she wanted advice from a peer and fellow inventor, or if she just wanted to discuss ideas. My lovely associate here was looking to get a staff weapon. Didn't you say you made one for a pro hero recently? The support student inquired. Yeah, but the guy decided he didn't want it. Izuku smiled sadly. He said he couldn't trust something that a quirkless person designed. Achako looked upset that some bigot talked down to someone as nice as Izuku. It seemed prejudice towards those who lacked a quirk was something that still existed. I'm sorry, she apologized for bringing it up. It's alright Eureka, Izuku assured. I'm used to it by now. You shouldn't have to deal with that. Achako suddenly said angrily. She's right, you're brilliant, you shouldn't have to take that kind of abuse, May added, equally angry. So you're interested in the staff? Izuku asked, changing the subject. It was a good weapon. One end could change into a grappling claw, the other into a loop like they use in zoos to wrangle animals, both with extend and retractable tethers that can be fired out a distance of 15 yards. Oh. It also could extend and change into a segmented whip form, he explained in detail, going off into one of his tangents again. Achako could use it quite well in combination with her anti-gravity quirk, making the staff weightless when she swings it. She could make them float, then capture them with the grapple staff. Izuku. You're doing it again, May interrupted him. Sorry, Izuku flushed in embarrassment. Bad habit of mine. It's fine, Achako found it kind of cute actually. Now I can't legally give you the prototype. However, I can send you the blueprint for it, and if May adds a few extra improvements, maybe repaint it a different color, then no one gets in trouble. Izuku smirked, then frowned when a small explosion went off behind him. Damn it. What was that? May asked with concern. This metal synthesizer I made keeps blowing up, Izuku sighed, running a hand through his messy green locks. I have to get back to work. I'll email you the staff blueprints. It was nice seeing you two again. Bye. Achako and May both waved at him before the screen cut out. Alright, looks like we have your boyfriend to thank for your new staff, May suddenly said. We're just friends. The pink-haired girl laughed at the other's denial. Meanwhile, in another room at UA, two others were having their own discussion. All Might was approached by his friend Detective Naoma Satsukachi during today's class training. The man asked to talk privately with him in the hero teacher's office, once their All Might deflated into his true form. What's this about? We're busy helping the students create special moves, Toshinori said. I came to you because we might have a possibly lead in the League of Villains. Naomasa took out a folder and placed it on the desk. We finally have a suspect that we think is secretly the villain Apotheosis. Description-wise, he's the best match in terms of height, age, hair and eyes. Opening the folder, the first thing in it was a photograph of a boy with dark green hair and eyes, freckled cheeks and a bright smile. His name is Izuku Midoriya. All Might coughed loudly, nearly choking on his own blood as he immediately recognized that face. What is it? The detective was surprised by the sudden reaction. I've met him once before. He remembered meeting the boy over a year ago when he saved him from being attacked by that sludge villain. He told his friend what happened, not leaving out a single detail from his memory of the event. He'd never seen a kid so devastated before. It hurt to crush the kid's dreams, but he was so sure that it was the right thing to do rather than let the kid hope for what was impossible. Plus he figured the boy would get over it and move on. Is it possible for someone like me without a quirk to become a hero? I told him no, that it wasn't possible. The skinny man looked away. Do you think that was the right thing to do? I'm the wrong person to ask, but if you want my opinion, I don't think quirks are everything. Naomasa told him what he thought. I've heard of some heroes with very impractical quirks, but when combined with a gadget or weapon it suddenly becomes very useful. But what if it was my words that turned a kid into a villain? Toshinori looked down at his bony clenched fist in shame. We're not even sure Midoriya and Apotheosis are the same person yet, the detective reminded him. He's just our only suspect. What do you have that points to him aside from matching descriptions? They flipped through the folder, revealing a few photos from traffic cameras. It showed a crowd of people watching the fight between All Might and All for One on the jumbo screen. In the back of the crowd, zoomed closely in the next photo, was the boy in question. He was dressed in a suit and holding a metal briefcase. He looks remarkably unconcerned with the fight compared to everyone else in the crowd, the officer pointed out. What was he even doing in Kamino at night? He's a student. Not only that, but in the next picture it looked like Izuku walked away before the fight was even finished, as if he didn't care. It was definitely a bit suspicious. There's more. We couldn't accurately pinpoint Apotheosis's quirk because he displayed different abilities in every noted encounter with him. There was a list of possible quirks he might possess. At the top was super intelligence, then energy manipulation, barrier projection, and recently teleportation was added to the list after the things witnesses saw him do during the training camp attack. In every encounter he seems to have a piece of machinery attached to himself. Katsuki Bakuga even said he used some sort of sticky foam grenade to trap him. What are you getting at? All Might asked. We never even considered the possibility that he doesn't have a quirk at all. It was true. Quirkless villains were rare mainly because they were hardly a threat in today's world, and they were always dealt with swiftly and easily. In fact, the longest a quirkless villain was at large before capture was 1 month. You think he built weapons and devices to make others think he had a quirk, the hero stated. Does Midoriya have the ability and resources to do that? You obviously still don't watch much of the news. Seeing the question on the gong face, he flipped through the file, stopping at an article from the internet. This is an article from this year's Tech Expo. In the top picture was Izuku Midoriya standing next to a big robot. He's been working as an intern for Geonosis Tech, but due to his genius, they've been fast-tracking him through their R&D department. The article also contained pictures and descriptions of the devices he invented, some of which functioned in the same way as the supposed quirks that Apotheosis displayed. Anti-villain robot, huh? All Might frowned as he read through the article. Is this all you have? While it's true this all fits together, we still don't have a motive or reason behind his actions. Actually we do now. Naomasa looked at him. You just said you met the kid before and told him he couldn't be a hero. What if it's revenge he's after? Shigaraki is the one that wants to kill me. Apotheosis has never expressed the same interest. We don't know what he wants, Toshinori corrected. You're forgetting what Ida said, he reminded him. Apotheosis told him that he wanted to create a true hero. Someone who's been repeatedly scorned and rejected by society, and its heroes might want that. Maybe he wants to make a hero that completely surpasses you for personal satisfaction. There's a list of psychological disorders I could dive into, but now isn't time for that. After a short but silent pause while Toshinori stared at the smiling, cheerful face of Midoriya, he finally asked, what happens if he is Apotheosis? He swallowed the guilt and steeled himself. He'll be arrested and questioned, the detective answered immediately. However, he's just a minor, so provided what information he surrenders on the League of Villains, he'll probably be let go under surveillance or house arrest. Maybe even placed into protective custody, the man sighed. It was exhausting putting all these pieces together the past week. If not, then he'll be sent to a juvenile detention center. I want to meet him, the hero spoke. At the very least I owe him an apology for crushing his dreams. If he is Apotheosis, I'll be able to tell by talking to him in person. Are you sure that's wise? Naomasa questioned. I've dealt with a lot of villains in my career, he said while holding up his bandaged fist. If there's secretly a villain hiding inside that boy, I'll know. I'll talk to Geonosis and see if we can arrange a meeting. The detective wrote something down in his notes. I hope you know what you're doing. 5 days later. Yagi Toshinori looked at the large tall building of Geonosis. He was here in his true form under the guise of the representative of UA looking into the new training devices and security systems. He also expressed interest in meeting their star intern Izuku Midoriya to see if he wanted to transfer to UA's support department. He had discussed it with Principal Nizu. In case it turned out that Midoriya wasn't apotheosis, they would still offer him the transfer. He did not however tell the company about the investigation or the fact that they suspect the boy might be a villain. Adjusting his oversized yellow suit, he made his way into the lobby. Toshinori didn't have to wait long. A company executive was waiting there to greet and show him around the building. After a short tour that ended in the research and development department, he was shown a bunch new security programs and training robots that would very useful in the students' development. Toshinori didn't understand half the techno mumbo jumbo they told him, but he still smiled and nodded like he did. Finally came the moment he was waiting for. He would get to meet Midoriya, the #1 suspect on the identity of apotheosis. He's probably working through lunch again, the executive said as they approached the office door. He hasn't gone back to school yet? Toshinori asked. Tomorrow he does, but for the past week he's been here day and night, the man chuckled. We had to force him to go back to his dorm after we caught him sleeping in his office the other night. The door opened and the two men walked into the office. Toshinori immediately spotted the boy on the other side of the room rapidly writing some sort of large equation on a whiteboard. He cleared his throat loudly when he realized that Izuku hadn't noticed them come in. Huh? The teen whipped his head around. Alf. Izuku quickly slapped a hand over his mouth, sending an apologetic gaze to the hero for almost revealing his identity. Sorry, he put his marker down and approached the two, straightening his white button-down shirt. I'm all tweaked out on caffeine and you startled me, he chuckled awkwardly. It's alright, the executive said. This is Yagi Toshinori, the representative from UA we told you was coming. It's nice to meet you, Izuku smiled playing along. Izuku Midoriya. I've heard a lot about you, the matchstick man said holding his hand out. All good I hope? The teen asked shaking the offered hand. One secretly a villain who knew exactly who the man was and the other secretly a hero who suspected who the boy was. What can I do for you? All Might took a brief moment to glance around the room. It looked like a normal windowless workspace, albeit a tad large for an intern. Some books on a shelf, a few pictures on the wall. The desk was cluttered with papers and blueprints, but what caught Toshinori's eye was the various All Might figures placed neatly on the front end. Some were even limited editions. So the boy was still a fan, even after what he said to him. One point towards not being a villain. Upon observing him he could tell that Izuku was considerably taller than the skinny kid he met over a year ago. He also appeared more muscular under his shirt. There were dark circles beginning to develop under his eyes suggesting a lack of proper sleep recently, but beyond that Toshinori didn't see any visual signs that would implicate him as a possible villain. Is it alright if we speak in private? He asked the executive who nodded and left the two of them alone. You look well kid, Toshinori said pulling up a chair from the work table. I didn't tell anyone about you I swear, Izuku shook his head frantically. Relax, the hero calmed him down. I'm not here about that. Oh. Izuku sighed in relief, but secretly he was smirking inside. You've come pretty far Midoriya, Toshinori smiled. An intern with his own office huh? They pretty much give me whatever I need as long as I keep producing results Izuku shrugged. I've seen those results, you've done a lot of good work for the support industry, the man said. Thank you, Izuku smiled proudly. That means a lot coming from a hero like you. All Might couldn't figure out if Midoriya was sincere or just a great actor. It was very difficult to see a villain in this boy, even with all the clues pointing to him. I'll get right to the point kid, I'm here on behalf of UA. We want to offer you a chance to transfer to the support class of our school. I would love nothing more, but I'm not qualified. Izuku looked down in dejection. I don't have a quirk. Actually they changed that rule over a year ago, All Might corrected while wondering if the kid already knew that and was just pretending. He doubted a villain would want to go to UA, an institute full of pro-hero teachers and students trained to defeat people like him. This was a test to see what his response would be. Really? I can actually go to UA? Izuku beamed with stars in his eyes. Toshinori frowned lightly at his words. Another point towards not being a villain. He went on to explain UA's support program, all of what it entailed, how Izuku would have to meet with the principal after he finished his internship. He learned that Midoriya was actually friends with someone from that class, a girl named Mei Hatsune that Power Loader frequently talked about in meetings. After they finished scheduling a day where he would come visit UA, Toshinori finally decided to talk about what was weighing on his mind. "Do you remember what I told you that day on the roof?" the emaciated man asked. "How could I forget?" Izuku smiled sadly. "That was the day I gave up my dream. It was not my intention to hurt you, or possibly turn you into a villain." "I understand. I really do." The boy looked down at his hands. "I have no quirk, and if I were to fight someone with a quirk, I pretty much lose by default," he sighed. "There really is no way someone like me can be a professional hero. I've accepted that reality." He then smiled brightly. "But that doesn't mean I can't find other ways to help people. That's why I plan to create the best hero support devices." "That's very mature and heroic of you," Toshinori said. "You look like you're on the right path for that." "Thank you. It's the best a quirkless kid like me can do." Izuku continued to smile. "If my Titan robot can save lives when I can't, I'll call that a victory." It was in that moment that Toshinori finally saw it. For one brief second before it vanished. There was a look in the boy's eyes, a look he had seen in many villains, and even in his enemy All For One years ago. A dark, gleeful, calculating look that held nothing but contempt for what they viewed as beneath him. In this case, it was himself that Izuku was glaring down at. Then it was gone, replaced by cheerful, mossy-haired boy that claimed he only wanted to help people. "Well, I can't wait to see what you develop while attending UA." Toshinori stood up. He'd seen enough. There was just one last place he needed to go after this. Shaking Midoriya's hand again, he left the office with a promise to keep in touch. Once outside the building, the hero let his bony shoulders finally sag in disappointment. He really didn't want to believe that Izuku and Apotheosis were one and the same, but it all pointed to him. Getting back in the car that he arrived in, he stared forward, not acknowledging the detective in the driver's seat. "So what do you think?" Naomasa inquired. "I'm almost positive that he's a villain," Toshinori said, holding back a cough. He had a nasty look in his eyes, hidden so well hidden I almost didn't catch it. "Okay, I believe you, but let's not go arresting a kid based off a look in their eyes." The detective looked at him with concern. "Let's go. One more stop," All Might ordered. "Where?" Naomasa asked. "Here." He handed him a piece of paper with a location written on it that he got when he called the boy's current high school about the UA transfer. "We're going to see his mother." Back inside Geonosis, within a secret lab, Izuku watched All Might drive off from his computer screen. He had an amused smirk on his face while he rested his head on his knuckles. "It looks like they're starting to put things together," he chuckled. "Oh, All Might. You may think you're finally catching up, but," he turned his gaze to a transparent cabinet that occupied the center of his lab. "You're still so many steps behind." He laughed as he stared at what appeared to be a gold metallic gauntlet resting in the case with two stones attached to special slots. One red, the other blue. Chapter 14, The Infinity Gauntlet. "Hello. Can I help you?" The door opened to reveal a middle-aged woman with a bit of weight on her who bared a striking resemblance to Izuku Midoriya. "My name is Toshinori. I'm a representative of UA. I was hoping to talk to you about your son Izuku," the gaunt man said. "Oh, come in." Ainko Midoriya held the door open, letting him inside. Toshinori walked in and sat down at the dining table when offered. "So what's this about UA?" She had yet to hear from her son about this, so she was tad lost. "I spoke with Izuku earlier today. We offered him a transfer into our support department and he accepted," Toshinori explained. "I just wanted to know more about him before he enters the program." "What do you want to know?" the woman asked. "It's my understanding that he's quirkless. Can you tell me about his childhood, what it was like for him?" He had his fears that it was similar to what his life was like back when he was young and still quirkless, before he met Nana Shimura. He was always a good boy. Izuku wanted nothing more than to help people. He believed it was always the right thing to do. Ainko began, smiling fondly at the memory. He grew up watching hero videos, mostly about All Might. Toshinori swallowed nervously. It was his dream to be a hero. He didn't want to be the best, but just being one would have been enough. It was here that Ainko's face turned sad. When he was 5 and his quirk didn't manifest, I took him to the doctor and he was diagnosed as quirkless. I know how devastating that can be. Toshinori remembered how he felt when he was a child and the same thing happened to himself. It was after that when people and other children started to treat him differently. She got a bit angry thinking about what her child had to go through. They treated Izuku like there was something wrong with him, like my boy had a disability. Ainko stared forward in anguish. Even his best friend Katsuki Bakugo turned his back on Izuku and started picking on him. Izuku never told on him, but I could tell what was going on. I knew young Bakuga was rough around the edges, but I didn't think a kid who aspired to be a hero would bully the weak. He was surprised to hear the two boys had a shared past. If you knew, why didn't you approach him or anyone else about it? Toshinori asked. I tried, Imco sighed sadly. I really did, but Izuku insisted that he was alright and the schools didn't seem to care. Whenever I called the school about the burn marks on my son's skin, they just chalked it up to kids playing. They said that children with quirks can play a bit rougher and that maybe it was Izuku's fault for not looking out for his own safety. Even after all that, he still wanted to be a hero, Toshinori stated with a curious tone. Yeah, he never gave up, until, she trailed off. Until. About a year ago something happened, Imco started. He came home one evening looking much more depressed than I've ever seen him. I believe it was the same day that Katsuki was attacked by that villain. All Might clenched his fist underneath the table trying to hold back the guilt. He remembered that day. He threw out all of his hero merchandise that evening. Imco wondered what was going through her son's head that time. Actually, I managed to keep it without him knowing and stored it away in case he ever returned to his old self. His old self? Toshinori questioned. He doesn't talk about heroes anymore. His face used to light up whenever he spoke about a new or current hero. Imco teared up a bit. He comes to visit on most weekends. He's still somewhat the same, but different in a way I can't describe. I understand, only someone as close to Izuku as his mother would realize that something was off about him. You kept the hero merchandise that he threw out. Is it alright if I see it? Toshinori needed to see for himself, before his suspicions were confirmed. Imco nodded and went into her room. A moment later she came back with a cardboard box and placed it on the table. Ignoring his apprehension, he opened the box and dark sunken eyes widened in surprise. It was all his merchandise. All Might action figures, All Might t-shirts, All Might mugs, All Might pillowcase, All Might pencil topper, and many more. It looked like the kid ordered the whole damn store catalog. Is it possible for someone like me without a quirk to become a hero? Izuku's question came back to haunt him again, as well as the answer he gave him. I was the hero he looked up to the most. Toshinori's guilt continued to eat at him. I'm sorry kid, but without a quirk you can't be a hero. We risk our lives every day. It's not something a quirkless person can do. Try being an officer. Sure, it's not the most glamorous job, but it's still a noble profession. Those were the words he used to crush the boy's dreams. Not just him. Toshinori realized that he was just the latest in a long line of people that stepped on Izuku's hopes. Who goes unnoticed in this world? Who is stepped on and forgotten? Who gets treated like an outcast? Whose hopes did you let down? Whose dreams did you crush without a second thought? All for One's words finally made sense. It's surprising that he agreed to transfer to UA, Imco said thoughtfully. Izuku told me he no longer had an interest in going there. What? The gaunt man stopped staring at the box of hero novelties and turned his attention back to the woman. He said he wasn't interested in UA anymore. That it wouldn't further his goals, Imco clarified. I see, he sighed and closed the box shut. Thank you for your time, ma'am. Toshinori stood up and made to show himself out. He's a good boy, he's just very sad right now. Talk to him more, Imco said as he left. I will. He'd be talking a lot with Izuku soon enough. Once outside he quietly made his way to the car where Naomasa was still waiting. Well? The detective asked. I had my doubts, but now I'm sure. Toshinori sounded worn out by this complicated situation. Izuku Midoriya is the villain Apotheosis. How convenient, because while you were in that apartment I got a call from the team still excavating the rubble of where the Nomu warehouse used to be. He brought out his phone and showed him a picture of a white hooded coat, slightly torn up, with spots of dirt and dust all over it. Look familiar? It's the same coat that Apotheosis wore. The team found it close to where the warehouse was located along with some very broken lab equipment. Don't tell me, hair and fingerprints. Toshinori guessed. We're a match to Izuku Midoriya's. Naomasa continued. I believe we have enough to bring him in for questioning. No, the hero disagreed. Not now. He goes back to school tomorrow. Apprehend him after class, do it quietly without media attention. May I ask why? To his mother and everyone else that knows him, Izuku is a good kid. A promising, brilliant young man that they all think highly of, Toshinori explained. He still has a chance to change and turn over a new leaf. After what he tells us about the League of Villains, I want to help him. Plastering his face all over the news and outing him as a villain will make it that much harder. Not just on him, but his mother too. All right, the detective agreed. We do it tomorrow evening with discretion. Thank you. Toshinori thanked his friend for doing this for him. The next day, Izuku walked through the halls of his academy smiling brightly and humming a chipper tune. All day he had been acting up. While most students were melancholy about being back to school, Izuku seemed to genuinely want to be here. Teachers and other students stopped and stared at him with confusion from the start of classes until the end. As he headed back to his dorm room with a skip in his step, he was suddenly stopped in the hall by one of the school security officers. Izuku Midoriya, security began. That's me. Izuku beamed. There are some people that want to see you outside. He repeated what the principal told him to say. Keep this quiet, they said. Really? I like meeting new people, the teen said with a bit too much enthusiasm. With a hand on his shoulder, the security led the boy outside, avoiding the crowds of other students. After a few minutes they eventually ended up at the school's back entrance where a group of police officers were waiting. Izuku Midoriya, my name is Detective Naomasa, a man in a trench coat introduced. I need you to come with us now. Oh, what's going on here? Izuku grinned. There's just some things we need to ask you at the station, the detective gestured to the back seat of the squad car. Am I being arrested? The boy asked. There's a difference between being brought in for questioning and being arrested. You can relax, Midoriya, Naomasa lied carefully. Izuku just nodded, keeping his amused demeanor, and got into the car. The detective and the officer driving were silent as they drove to the station. He never stopped smiling, and it honestly started to creep the two of them out. When they arrived, another group of policemen were there waiting for them in case Midoriya realized what was happening and tried to make a run for it. Keeping a close eye on Izuku, Naomasa escorted him out of the car and into the building. I've never been to a police station before, Izuku said in a delighted tone. Naomasa put him in a questioning room with a table, set of chairs, and of course a one-way mirror. After leaving the eerily smiling boy in the room for a few minutes, Naomasa came in and placed a file on the table. Let's begin. You are Izuku Midoriya, age 15, legal guardian. I'm Ko Midoriya, first-year student of Coruscant Academy, the detective read from the file. That's right, Izuku confirmed with his ever-present grin. I'm now going to ask you a series of questions. Naomasa activated his quirk lie detector and began the questioning. Where were you the night of July 5th? Hanging out with some friends, that was the truth. A vague truth the detective noticed. Then can you explain this? He flipped open the file and showed him a picture from the traffic camera of Izuku with a crowd of people. That was you in Kamino the night All Might and other heroes conducted a raid on the League of Villains. What were you doing there? I was hanging out with some friends, Izuku said again without losing the smirk. I'll ask again. What were you doing in Kamino Ward that night? And I'll tell you again, Izuku leaned forward over the table. I was with my friends. Are your friends perhaps villains? Naomasa inquired, keeping his quirk active. What would make you think that? Izuku cocked his head. The detective pulled out a few more documents from the file and placed them in front of the boy. We found a jacket with traces of your hair and fingerprints, he said, pointing at the photo. The same jacket that matches the costume worn by the villain Apotheosis. Can you explain that? In response, Izuku just giggled, covering his mouth until he couldn't hold it in any longer, and burst out laughing. No. He continued to cackle. Wow, I didn't expect this. That we would finally catch on to you. Naomasa questioned. He was about to signal for All Might to come in and join when he noticed something strange. Izuku's skin started to slowly turn gray. I didn't expect my dear Izuku to think this far ahead. Even his clothes were turning gray and slimy. Then again, Shigaraki always thought highly of Izuku's intelligence. The grayish sludge began to fall off. It seems my time is up. Now I know why he picked this day, he chuckled as his voice changed to that of a young woman. Izuku Midoriya finally melted away into goop, and now there sat a naked, psychotic-looking blonde girl. Hi. The name's Toga Himiko, but I'm sure you know that by now. The doors burst open and All Might charged in, standing protectively in front of his friend. Where is he? The hero demanded. Izuku-kun? I don't know, he didn't tell me. Toga blushed, covering her nude stain. He only gave me enough blood to live like him for one day. They weren't sure what the hell she was talking about, but figured it had something to do with her quirk. All Might, Naomasa came to a shocking realization. I think he's been ahead of us the whole time. Can I get some clothes please? Toga asked. Put her in a cell. The detective ordered as more officers came in with cuffs. I feel so used. Toga frowned for a moment then grinned again. And surprisingly turned on. I hope he uses me again. She laughed while getting arrested. Sir, a call just came in. All Might and Naomasa turned to face another officer. I'm not sure if this is related, but Geonosis called and said that someone locked them out of their building. Quickly putting things together, they realized that Izuku must be behind this. As an intern he would have access to the facility, and as a villain he was probably trying to fortify himself inside. Instead of lamenting being outsmarted by a teenager, the hero and detective decided to quickly act. They didn't get the suspect they wanted, but at least they captured a member of the League. Let's go. All Might rushed out of the room. I'll meet you there. Geonosis Tech. Sirens surrounded the building as the police rapidly formed a perimeter as soon as they arrived on the scene. All Might stood there, having arrived minutes earlier. The entire building staff was outside, standing around the fountain. What's happening? An officer asked All Might. They said the fire alarm went off, and as soon as everyone evacuated, the building's defense system activated. The hero pointed, showing them the metal shielding that now covered the windows. Midoriya, what are you up to? He mumbled to himself. This had to be the work of Izuku, but why would he hole himself up in a building that he must know won't protect him for long? Unless he was stalling so he could make an escape. Or maybe something far worse. Evacuate the area. Remembering what happened in Kamino, he wouldn't make the same mistake twice. Cover all escape routes. I'm going in by myself. Are sure, All Might? Yes. I will handle this. Don't let anyone else, hero or police, inside the building. All Might smiled heroically as he approached the sealed-off front entrance to the building. I'm sorry, Midoriya, but I can't allow whatever it is you're doing to continue. Cocking his arm back, he punched a large hole through the metal plating, shattering the glass door behind it. Secret lab. Izuku stopped typing at his computer when felt the tremor coming from the lobby area. It seems I have a guest. He switched to the security footage downstairs, where he spotted All Might himself stepping through a hole he just made. Right on time, he smirked as he pushed the button on his keyboard. Lobby. The room went dark as All Might looked around. Keeping on guard, he waited for what he assumed was an attack, but nothing happened. Instead, a set of double doors opened and the lights came on down the hall. Obviously Midoriya was leading him into the heart of the building for some reason. Fine, he'll play along. Keeping an eye open for any traps, the hero followed the lights and opening doors. Eventually he left the offices and entered the manufacturing area of the building. Going past the various empty labs, All Might finally came to an entrance labeled testing. The large metal door slid open, allowing him access. Once inside, the lights switched on, revealing a very large, high-ceilinged room, covered in gray metal plating. This must be where Geonosis tests out their newly made devices and inventions. Thank you for coming, All Might, a voice rang out over the intercoms. Midoriya. It's over. Show yourself. All Might shouted. Upon the wall facing him, a video was projected up, taking up nearly the whole surface area. Is this good enough? Izuku asked, appearing on the screen. You're the villain Apotheosis, aren't you? All Might said. He noticed Izuku looked very different than the wide-eyed boy he met before. His eyes were now hooded and had that nasty glare again. I was, Izuku began. But I haven't been since the training camp attack, if that makes you feel any better. Just come out from wherever you're hiding, All Might pleaded. We can talk about this. Talk. Izuku chuckled. The guy who solves crime with his fists wants to talk. All Might noticed that he kept glancing off screen at something and wondered what he was planning. We'll talk, but not now. No. Now I want you to meet a project I've been working on. I assume you've seen that Titan robot I designed. Realizing what he was about to do, the hero smiled triumphantly. Do you really think that bucket of bolts can take on the symbol of peace? All Might frowned when Izuku just laughed. That was the original prototype you're thinking of, the boy smirked. I've designed several better, more enhanced versions since the expo. Would like to meet version 6. All Might didn't get a chance to answer as one of the floor panels opened and something big was elevated into the testing room. Say hello to my anti-hero robot. Standing there was a robot as tall as All Might, but slimmer and sleeker than its original model. This version was white, covered in what looked like ribbed armor, a smooth featureless face with only 2 glowing red eyes, and the number 6 printed on its armored chest. The Titan. You're going to have your robot fight me for you? All Might mocked. Cut me some slack, Izuku smirked. I'm quirkless, remember. My intelligence is all I have to work with. The robot activated, making a metallic growling noise for intimidation. Have fun. The Titan stomped forward, target in sight. This won't stop me. All Might faced the machine, meeting it halfway with a punch. Detroit. Smash. His fist connected with the metal torso, creating a big shockwave. The collision itself made the testing chamber shake. The robot didn't even budge, not even a dent in its armored plating. What is this? The Titan growled, grabbed his wrist and hurled him across the room with unbelievable strength. All Might landed on his feet and came at it again with more punches. Each one did nothing, but he noticed the rigged armor seemed to ripple from each attack. Does this situation seem familiar to you? Izuku asked through the large telescreen. After all I did to replicate that Nomu's shock absorption. It should seem very familiar, he said with mock anger. You witnessed that fight firsthand, All Might pointed out. Yeah. Izuku nodded with a smile. Then you should know that won't be enough, the hero said confidently. You are absolutely right, the boy agreed while his hand reached off camera. Unfortunately that Nomu was just a big meat puppet and didn't possess any intelligence. The robot suddenly got into a fighting stance. Let's see you deal with a doll that knows how to fight back. The Titan rushed him, using a combination of punches and kicks. All Might was able to block them all, but couldn't deliver a decisive blow back because of that shock-absorbing ability. The robot hit very hard and sometimes fired some sort of energy from its fists. Oh come on. The hero went from blocking to dodging when a blade slid out of the Titan's right arm and then attempted to hack him to pieces. Luckily All Might was able to snap the weapon in half. He could end this if he could just combo the thing, but the Titan wouldn't let him. Izuku smirked watching the fight. Using his control console he ordered the robot to target the hero's vulnerable spot. The Titan let itself be hit again, but this time when it grabbed All Might's wrist it held on tight. Then with its right arm it fired an energy-empowered punch right into the center of the hero's secret injury. All Might gasped in pain and flung the robot away. He began coughing violently as he clutched his side. Oops. Izuku taunted. You really should be careful who you reveal your weak points to, the boy chuckled. You never know if some kid might end up a villain in the future, he said in chastising manner as All Might hacked up a geyser of blood on the floor. Is this it for you? The Titan pointed its left arm at the hero as it transformed into some sort of gun. Fire. Izuku ordered. Just as the robot was about to shoot its laser a bunch of branches appeared out of nowhere and grabbed its wrist, veering the beam meters off course. I thought I told them, All Might coughed. To not let anyone in here. Standing close to the entrance of the test chamber were the pro heroes Kamui Woods and Edgeshot. Weren't you the one who said that heroes don't have to fight alone? Edgeshot said. He's right, going alone is just foolish, Kamui added. When they arrived on the scene with the others the two of them were the only ones who agreed to follow the number one hero inside. It seemed that it was the right choice. Oh that's just not fair. Izuku honestly wasn't expected reinforcements, but it still made little difference to him. Thanks for the help. All Might stood back wiping the blood from his mouth. This thing moves pretty fast. I need one of you to hold it down. On it. Kamui Woods quickly used his lacquered chain prison to pin the robot in place. Once its limbs were locked down All Might looked to the other hero for help. Can you do something about its shock-absorbing armor? Edgeshot nodded shooting forward with incredible speed, thinning his body out as he moved. He was able to slip between the metal plating of the Titan's torso and knock it loose. Once that was taken care of All Might came in to deal the final blow. Texas. Smash. One hit and the machine exploded into wires, circuits and metal bits. Okay so the Titan isn't good at fighting multiple quirk users at once, Izuku sighed in disappointment. I'll have to remember that for when I design the next one. You won't get the chance. All Might shouted at him, momentarily losing his cool. Midoriya please, he regained his composure after reminding himself that the villain he was facing was still just Kid. Your robot is beaten, just surrender peacefully. No I don't think I will, Izuku's face lit up when he glanced off screen. If you want to talk so badly then come up and see me in my office. You remember where it is. After he said that the screen switched off, followed by the entire building shutting down. He cut the power, Edgeshot realized. The police outside said he was a quirkless boy, Kamui Woods said. He must understand that he's been backed into a corner. Even a beast with its back to the wall is still dangerous. We shouldn't underestimate him, Edgeshot warned looking at the broken pile of parts that used to be a robot that could stand up to the number one hero. His office is on the 16th floor, follow me and keep an eye open for more robots and traps, All Might ordered. As soon as they left the darkened test chamber another floor panel opened up. This one released a small robot the size of a toaster, resembling a mechanical spider. The machine crawled across the floor, approaching the pool of hero blood spilled from All Might himself when the Titan punched his weak spot. The spider produced a long syringe needle and sucked up a sample, then quietly crawled away as it was programmed to do. Upstairs, Izuku smirked triumphantly as he held a neon yellow stone in his hand. The time stone. It took him a while, but he finally managed to reach a breakthrough. He kept trying to attach so many enhancer quirks onto the time-stopping quirk, but it never worked. It seemed to collapse in on itself in the computer. So he added another quirk to hopefully balance it out. A wonderfully useful ability that belonged to a famous doctor called Restoration. All he had to do was ask Geonosis to procure a blood sample for him under the pretense of research purposes. Then they made a few calls overseas and just like that a powerful quirk was delivered to him. Izuku was right in the middle of downloading the formula into the forge when All Might showed up as he expected. He lured the hero into the test chamber and activated the Titan to stall until the machine finished processing the stone. Using up all the building's power, he finally had the time stone ready to go. It's time, he chuckled at the pun as he took the stone over to the transparent case where the gauntlet was held. The Infinity Gauntlet was quite a magnificent piece of technological art. Izuku would even go as far to say it was probably the greatest invention in human history. After he created the Reality Stone, he used its abilities with the metal synthesizer he built to implant the properties and traits of multiple different metals together to create a brand new metal. Perfect in every way. Resistant to heat, cold, electricity, magnetic fields, lightweight yet completely indestructible and harder than anything on the planet. Not even All Might in his prime could dent this stuff. A shiny gold-colored metal that went above and beyond all other metals. That's why Izuku named it after UA's school motto. Plus Ultra Metal. Unfortunately, the metal was so strong that it was impossible to melt it down or cut it into the pieces he needed to make a gauntlet. Izuku, however, being the brilliant boy that he is, figured out a way around that. He modified the metal synthesizer to work similar to a 3D printer, in that the machine would form the metal into the necessary shapes as it was being created. Every single piece of the gauntlet was individual crafted this way. Every plate, joint, bolt, screw, wire and circuit was made of this metal and all Izuku had to do was put it all together. It took 3 days to build it and Izuku nearly passed out multiple times from lack of sleep. It's so beautiful, Izuku almost wanted to cry seeing his creation finally realized. The gauntlet looked to be made of polished gold. Each part had what appeared to be circuit board-like patterns lightly etched into the surface. There were 5 stone slots in total. 3 along the forearm, 1 on the back of the palm and the last on the inside of the hand. 2 of the arm slots were occupied by the blue space stone on the bottom, and the red reality stone in the center arm slot. Plus Ultra Metal was designed to work in conjunction with the mortal resin that the stones were made of in a way that would bond itself to it. So when the stone was placed in the slot they would be permanently fused to the gauntlet and impossible to remove. The green-haired teen gently placed the yellow stone into the 3rd slot closest to the wrist and smiled as the bonding process immediately took place, fusing the time stone to the gauntlet. When that was done he ripped off the left sleeve of his lab coat and white button shirt underneath. Taking the gauntlet from the case with his right hand, Izuku slowly inserted his left into the opening. Once it was fully in, he felt the fitting mechanism activate, compressing the plates together and tightening it to his arm enough to not cut off circulation, but just enough to make it difficult to take off. Gah! Izuku screamed as he felt the power of the stones immediately start flowing into him. The prototype didn't fully draw out the space stone's power, but this time he got the full dose of all 3 at once. He came to the conclusion in his research on quirks that what ultimately controlled them and drew the abilities out was a person's nervous system, and so the gauntlet was designed to link the stones up with Izuku's own nervous system, giving him full access to all their abilities. Ha! Izuku clenched his fists, refusing to fall to his knees. A glowing vein-like pattern covered his body, changing from blue to red and lastly yellow. A few moments later the strain finally started to dissipate as the power settled, and glowing veins dimmed away. Izuku breathed in and out, still feeling the power in him, but no longer any pain. What a rush! The freckled boy looked down at the arm of the gauntlet, staring in awe at the 3 stones. His gaze then drifted to the monitor screen on the wall of his secret lab. It showed All Might stepping into his office followed by the 2 heroes that tagged along. How exciting! Looks like I get to field test my Infinity Gauntlet. Izuku grinned as his eyes glowed the same red color as the Reality Stone. The office. Midoriya. All Might walked into the spacious room the company provided the intern with. Looking around he didn't spot him anywhere. He's not here, Kamui Wood said, also examining the room. Do you think he snuck out while we were fighting that robot? The entire building is surrounded by police and other heroes that have arrived on the scene, so how could have escaped? Edgeshot wondered. All Might walked over to desk looking for some clue as to where the kid may have gone. Finding nothing, he approached the back wall. The hero looked to the photos hanging there. One was of Izuku from the Tech Expo with his prototype robot. The next was of the boy's mother Imco, who he met yesterday, but the third picture made him pause. It was a lightly singed piece of paper from a notebook that had All Might's autograph written in marker, placed behind glass in a wood frame. Is it possible for someone like me without a quirk to become a hero? That question from that day just wouldn't leave him alone. I'm so sorry, Midoriya. I never meant to drive you to the side of villainy. He took the picture down, and that's when he saw it. Hidden behind where the frame was placed, a numbered panel used for doors was embedded into the wall. Placing his ear against the white surface, he knocked on it a few times. This wall is hollow, he realized. Stand back. Punching a hole through the plaster and metal, he used his strength to pry the hidden entrance open, revealing a metal hallway that led to what appeared to be a big vault door. Wait here, I'll check this out. All Might left the two of them in the office while he approached the sealed door. He figured Izuku Midoriya must be hiding behind it, so he prepared to rip it off its hinges when he noticed a faint red glow along the edges of the door. Before he had a chance to ponder what that glow was, the door came flying towards, hit his body, and took him past the office, straight through the walls, up the side of the building, and crashing right into the skyscraper next to it. What? Kamui Woods and Edgeshot stared in shock as the number one hero went flying between them and through the building. They turned to look down the hole that All Might and the door made, wondering if he was okay. So this is what it's like, they whipped around as the voice behind them spoke. To have an all-powerful quirk. At the end of the secret passage stood the suspect the police told them about. Izuku Midoriya, dressed in a white button shirt, dark green vest, matching dress pants, green tie and black shoes. What drew their eyes though was the gold gauntlet on his left hand with 3 different colored stones placed in slots along the arm. Izuku took casual steps towards the two heroes, and with each one Kamui Woods and Edgeshot could feel an aura of raw untamed power getting thicker and heavier the closer he got. To think a quirkless kid could make the pros freeze in fear. The teen didn't say a word, he simply walked past them and through the hole that he just created by throwing All Might. Wait. Kamui was the first to snap himself out of it. Izuku ignored him and kept walking. Stop right there. He shot branches out in an attempt to capture the boy, who still wouldn't turn around. The last thing the wooden hero saw was a flash of yellow, and in the next instant all his branches were broken into pieces and lacerations appeared all over his body. He collapsed into unconsciousness. What was that? Edgeshot was sweating, wondering what Midoriya just did. Whatever it was, it took down Kamui Woods in an instant. He needed to be careful. Well, Izuku spoke, interrupting his thoughts. Are you going to do something or not? The kid stopped walking and waited for the hero to make a move. In response, Edgeshot decided to get over whatever was making him fear this boy and transformed his body into a long thin cord, moving faster than the speed of sound. He never reached Midoriya. Instead, his thinned out form was immediately crumpled, tangled and knotted into a wadded mess and tossed to the floor. Wonderful, Izuku whispered, walking through the holes with a dazed look on his face. He made a left when he reached one of the main halls. The teen seemed to be on a strange surreal high, almost like he couldn't believe that he just took out 2 top-ranked pros. At the end of the hall, he simply pointed his gauntlet at the window covered by metal plating and watched in fascination as the glass shattered and the metal split apart, bending outwards to make an opening big enough for him to exit. Izuku looked at the outside world, gazing at the cityscape as the breeze lightly tossed his green messy locks. All those years wanting, wishing and dreaming for a quirk, any quirk. Now he finally had not just one, several extremely powerful quirks. He took a step forward through the opening, but instead of falling 16 floors to his death, his body levitated into the air. Izuku floated high above the heroes and police, who watched in shock that the quirkless villain was now flying. You were right, All Might, Izuku smirked down at them. You can't be a hero without a quirk. You can't change the world without power. He reached out with the Infinity Gauntlet and brought his thumb and middle finger together. All for One was also right. The world won't listen to you unless you show them your power. All 3 stones glowed brightly as Izuku snapped his fingers, releasing a massive wave of energy that shook the surrounding buildings, shattered every window, blew away all the cars, and sent every hero and police officer flying off their feet. Chapter 15. God. It's quiet around here, Achako yawned. She was sitting on the couch with some friends from class after finishing her homework. The provisional license exam was coming up, so it was nice to have a break from all the training and villain attacks. Mina turned on the television hoping for something that might alleviate the boredom. Flipping channels to the news, she was about to change it again when a Chaco told them to wait. "What is it?" Momo asked. The news was reporting live on the scene. A villain had taken control of Geonosis Technicians building and locked himself inside. "Isn't that where your boyfriend works?" Tsuayu said aloud. "He's not my boyfriend," a Chaco argued with a blush. "And yes. What's his name?" Mina asked, curious to know who Gravity Girl was smitten with. "Izuku Midoriya," the news suddenly said, showing a picture of the boy. Police on the scene have revealed the identity of the villain Apotheosis, a known member of the League of Villains. Huh. A Chaco's brain stopped working for a moment after they said that. That's not possible. Izuku a villain? Izuku the nicest, sweetest boy she knew working for the League? What the? Mina's jaw dropped. Eureka's crush was a villain? I guess the wedding's off, Tsuayu chimed in. What did they just say? Ida appeared in the room, having just entered in time to hear the report. Apotheosis was the villain that saved him from staying. Turn it up. Mina fumbled with the remote for a moment before turning the sound up. The news reported All Might himself had entered the building to apprehend the villain. A few minutes later, the heroes Kamui Woods and Edgeshot arrived on the scene and went inside to back him up. After some time, more heroes and police showed up, but no one else went inside. The reporters stopped talking when something went flying out the side of the building and crashed straight through another. What's happening? Momo asked, watching the scene. The camera zoomed into the front of the building where a hole appeared and green-haired boy the same age as the students levitated into the air. That's him. A Chaco's eyes widened, seeing the boy she knew. Izuku held his gold-covered left arm out, and in an instant everything was blown away and the video feed was cut. The students were too shocked for words. What was that? Tsuayu asked. At the scene. HMMPH. Izuku slapped his right hand over his mouth as his eyes widened in shock at what he just did. The sheer excitement from the amount of power he now possessed almost made him throw up. Wow, he whispered, looking at his infinity gauntlet in amazement. To think that was only 30% with 3 stones. That's enough, Midoriya. All Might appeared, having recovered from getting knocked into a building. He saw the destruction that boy caused and almost couldn't believe what just happened. Oh hello, Izuku smirked down at him as he reached out with the gauntlet and ripped the chunk of concrete that the hero was standing on out of the ground. Whoa. All Might looked around in confusion as he was lifted into the air. Jumping off the floating rock, he made to grab Midoriya, but a portal opened between them, sending the hero back to the ground. This is amazing, Izuku exclaimed. He pointed a digit at one of the nearby buildings and watched with joy as a large gash was carved into the side of it in the path his finger was moving. It's even better than hoped it would be. With a wave of his gauntlet, the boy lifted up a few turned over cop cars and started juggling them in the air. I'm starting to see why you're so addicted to your power, All Might. What have you done? The hero demanded. It didn't make any sense. Midoriya was supposed to be quirkless, he told him so the day they met. Yet here he was with not only a warping quirk, but also a powerful telekinetic quirk. I leveled the playing field, Izuku smirked down at him from where he was floating. Is that so wrong? That a quirkless person like myself figured out a way to achieve limitless power, he chuckled. What the hell is going on here? A voice shouted. The hero and villain turned to see Endeavor arrived on the scene. Endeavor. All Might called. Ah. More test subjects. Izuku wasn't afraid at all. With the infinity gauntlet on his hand, there was nothing to fear anymore. Did you do this? Endeavor turned his glare to the one responsible to all this destruction. A villain arrogantly levitating in the air as if he was above them all. Sneering at the boy, he blasted him with fire in an effort to one-up All Might before he took the victory. Wait. He's just boy. The #1 hero shouted, but was sadly ignored. Izuku's grin widened, seeing the fire coming at him. Using the gauntlet, he made a quick upwards pulling motion, and in seconds all the water from the fountain below him was yanked upwards to collide with the flames and fizzle them out. Water. The ultimate antithesis of fire. Izuku laughed. How are you the #2 with such an obvious weakness? He questioned while launching all the water at the hero so fast he didn't have time to dodge and was swept away. Stop this. All Might attempted to jump and grab him again, but this time Izuku flash warped away. After the hero's large hand passed through where the boy was, he frantically glanced around. Looking for someone. Izuku appeared higher and away from him with glowing red eyes. Smirking, he reached out to another building and ripped the antennae off with the reality stone and threw it like a spirit All Might. Being in midair, the muscled hero wouldn't be able to dodge, so instead he grabbed it with his hands and safely fell with it to the ground. Nicely done. Izuku applauded him. Please just stop. All Might pleaded again. I don't know what power All for One gave you, but that doesn't mean you should trust. He was cut off by the green-haired teen laughing at him. I turned him down actually. The man paused in surprise. He offered me a quirk and I turned him down. I don't need a quirk, I never did. Waving his left hand, Izuku lifted multiple chunks of concrete. If someone like me can become the strongest person in the world, then that means that quirks aren't as great as everyone made them out to be. With a shout, he tossed the rocks at All Might. They're overrated. Texas Smash. With one punch he reduced all the chunks to pebbles. Not giving Izuku a chance to fight back or teleport away, he rushed through the air so fast the eye couldn't follow. In a second he was within touching distance of the boy, but right when he reached out to grab him, the yellow stone on the gauntlet glowed brightly and then everything stopped. The entire area was encased in a big yellow translucent bubble and everything inside had apparently frozen in time, all except the one who cast it. 10. Izuku smiled, seeing All Might frozen still with his big hand inches away from his face. 9. 8. He floated and glided around the hero as if he was in water. 7, 6, 5, 4. Once he was behind All Might, he pointed his gauntlet-covered hand at his back. 3, 2, 1. The bubble dissipated and time resumed. Izuku grabbed the hero with the power of the reality stone, covering him in a red glow. Rah! With all his strength he threw All Might straight into the ground below. The impact created a small crater and kicked up a mushroom cloud of dust. Izuku coughed, clutching his throat. How does Kaken scream all the time? I almost ruined my throat. It will take more than that. All Might emerged from the rubble. To defeat the symbol of peace. Izuku just scowled at him. I know it will. He said back. However, instead of fighting me, you should be more worried about evacuating everyone here. Why? Izuku just grinned and pointed a thumb behind him. This building is about collapse. With roar he turned and made a rapid clawing motion with his gauntlet. With his new power he tore a massive chunk out of the corner Geonosis's building. Kamui Woods and Edgeshot are still in my office. Better fetch them. All Might panicked as the building began to lean precariously. Bye. He waved goodbye as a portal opened behind Izuku that he let himself fall through, vanishing without a trace. Damn it. Without thinking twice, the hero soared through the air and crashed through the slowly collapsing building. He landed in Midoriya's office and grabbed the unconscious body of Kamui Woods in the pile of tangled cord that was obviously Edgeshot. Leaping through the same hole he came from, All Might quickly began gathering up as many injured police as possible. Some of the other heroes began waking up and followed All Might's lead. Even Endeavor reluctantly helped the number one hero get everyone to a safe distance. Once everyone was out of the way, the building finally collapsed, falling to pieces, and with it all the evidence of what Midoriya was working on that secret room of his. Izuku was smart. He trashed the building to not only escape, but to cover his tracks as well. Elsewhere, Aimko was holding her breath while watching the news. She had seen everything. From the announcement from the police about how her son was a known member of the League of Villains called Apotheosis. She watched with shock as they showed live footage of the building where Izuku had sealed himself inside. All Might himself went inside and Aimko breathed a sigh of relief. If anyone could bring her son back to her and talk some sense into him, it was the number one hero. Her relief turned to horror as Izuku appeared on the screen levitating in front of the building. He then did something that blew away everything around him and caused the live feed to cut out. What's happening? Where are you, Izuku? She wondered while waiting anxiously for the news to report anything. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. Hello, she answered. I'm sure you've seen the news by now. That was Izuku's voice. Izuku, Aimko spoke quietly. I can imagine what you must think of me. He sighed remorsefully into the phone. Where are you? She asked. I'm sorry, but I can't say, Izuku apologized. Why? Aimko wanted to know why he turned into a villain. Where did things go wrong? Izuku just chuckled sadly at her question. Isn't that the question everybody will be asking? He paused for a moment. I just want you to know, Mom, I don't blame you for anything. None of this was your fault. Everything I did and planned to do is all 100% me. Please, Izuku, you don't have to do this, she pleaded. Just come home. You have no idea how tempting that offer is. Izuku sounded a bit choked up on the other end of the line. But I can't take it. I started something big. I've come this far, so I might as well go all the way. You don't have to, sweetie. Whatever those villains talked you into, you don't have to do it. I'm sorry, Mom, but I've been planning this since before I joined the League of Villains, he apologized again. I realized a while ago that I can't live a world where people like All Might and Katsuki get everything handed to them on a silver platter just because of a superior quirk. I can't let that fraud get away with it. No, I won't let him get away with his lies. Never again. Izuku quickly calmed himself down. Goodbye, Mom. We'll see each other again when I've made everything right. With those parting words he hung up. Izuku. 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 Aimiko kept calling her son's name into the phone. She softly cried while hearing the dead tone. At a street corner. Izuku looked down at his phone one last time. He hated hurting his mother like that, but he vowed to himself that he would make it up to her. He stood up from the bench and tossed his phone into the trash, no longer needing it. Walking into the middle of the busy street, he simply waved his gauntlet and forced all the cars to swerve to the left and to the right, making a big open path right down the middle. He waited about a minute and right on cue, the squad car that he was tracking arrived. Izuku smirked seeing his target and pointed his left armor-covered hand at it. The police inside didn't realize what hit them. First they saw a boy in a white lab coat pointing at them, the next thing they knew a portal opened in between them. As soon as the car was halfway through, Izuku snapped it closed, splitting the vehicle in two. The front half with the two officers in it was teleported somewhere else while the back half skied to a stop in front of the boy. Hello, Toga, Izuku smiled seeing the girl bound in handcuffs in what was left of the car. Izuku-kun. Himiko grinned showing her enlarged canines. I didn't think you'd come back for me. I don't abandon friends and allies, he said extending his right hand out for her. I thought you knew that about me. Toga took his offered hand and allowed him to remove her handcuffs with some strange gauntlet he wore. Did I do a good job impersonating you? She already figured out that he used her as a distraction, but she didn't care. Yes, you did. Izuku decided to throw her a bone and give her some praise and a pat on the head. You've proven yourself invaluable to me. With another wave of his gauntlet he opened a new portal next to them. Need a ride? You seem so different, Toga grinned. You're more confident than the Izuku-kun that I knew. Maybe this is the real me? Or maybe this is the new me? He wondered aloud. The teen did feel different ever since he put the Infinity Gauntlet on. He felt as if there was nothing holding him back anymore, like he could be whatever he wanted. Do whatever he wanted. No more restrictions, and no more bastards telling him what he could and couldn't do. For the first time in his life, Izuku felt truly free in every sense of the word. Let's go. You need to call Tamura and have him pick you up. Later that night. How did this all go to hell? All Might asked mostly himself. After the incident he had returned to UA, practically collapsing into his true fur on the couch in the teacher's lounge, having nearly exhausted his power fighting that robot, battling Izuku, evacuating the area and then spending the majority of the night helping the police sift through the debris for any clues to what the boy had done to himself. So far they had found nothing. It was all destroyed when Midoriya collapsed the building. He still hadn't come to terms with that. Where did that boy get these abilities? He said All for One offered him a quirk, but he turned it down. Why would he turn that man down? But what concerned him was that he knew All for One wasn't a person that took no for an answer. That means the villain probably knew what Izuku was up to. Everything he said during their last battle finally made more sense. How are you holding up? In what, Principal Nizu? He too had seen what happened on the news and wanted to check on his fellow educator and friend. I let a boy that I turned into a villain get away. How do you think I'm holding up? Toshinori asked sarcastically. You didn't let him get away, the small white bipedal animal corrected. He caught you by surprise and successfully escaped. There was nothing you could have done against an opponent who thought that far ahead. I should have, the man replied. I'm supposed to be the symbol. Nizu cut him off. The symbol of peace and justice. Yes, I know. The principal walked over and sat himself on the couch next to the hero. I've been giving it some thought. Ever since I saw what happened on the television, I started wondering about Izuku Midoriya. Is it true that he's supposed to be quirkless? He was, not anymore from what All Might had witnessed. Why do you ask? From what I was able to gather about him online, he's a very intelligent boy. Graduated middle school early and got into one of the best non-heroic schools in the country, top of his class, interned for Geonosis Tech and designed a line of new support devices. The company even praised him for his supposedly amazing quirk analysis skills. Nizu listed off all the things he already knew about the kid. Where you going with this? Toshinori asked. Coupled with that new invention of his, he would made a wonderful hero. Way to twist the knife of guilt further in. Though something he just said made the hero pause. What new invention? The gaunt man inquired. The device on his left hand, the gauntlet, Nizu pointed out. From what I observed from the incident, his power seemed to emanate from that gauntlet he wears. Now that he mentioned it, All Might did remember the metal glove on Midoriya's hand. You couldn't miss it. He also remembered how it would glow when he used whatever quirks he now had. Has there ever been a case of someone building a machine that replicates a quirk? Toshinori wondered. None that I can recall, Nizu pondered. Ever since the hero profession started, all technological research has been focused on the enhancement of quirks. That's how the support item industry was born. What if someone could build such a device? Then that person would become quite powerful, not just physically but socially too, Nizu explained. Imagine how the public will react when they find out it's possible to artificially replicate quirks. Dagobah Municipal Beach. A black misty wharf gate opened up in the parking lot. Out of stepped the new leader of the league, Tamura Shigaraki, followed by Dabi and their transport Kirajiri. Is this the place? Dabi asked. This is where Miss Himiko said she was waiting for us, Kirajiri said. Shigaraki ignored them and marched towards the beach while they followed. Passing mountains of scrap metal, junk, abandoned cars and broken down appliances. They paused when they saw a rusted car frozen in midair covered in a blue aura. What the hell? Dabi raised a brow. There were more around them locked into space, not just cars, but old fridges and dishwashers too. Look, Kirajiri pointed towards what looked like a pile of glass shards. Next thing they passed was a large pillar made entirely of ice, then a pyramid made of sand, and finally a big ball made of crushed junk packed together. What is all this? Shigaraki wondered, looking around for their wayward member. Over here. They all looked over to see Toga waving at them. She was sitting close to the water with her arms wrapped around her pulled up knees with a dreamy look on her face. What's going on here? Tamura questioned her. He said he wanted to practice. Toga smiled. Pooh. The water off in the distance erupted like a geyser, shooting straight into the air. At the base of it stood a figure. That figure began moving towards them, walking on the very surface of the water until they could see that it was their former member Izuku Midoriya, aka Apotheosis. The boy strolled up to them, his vest and lab coat discarded, leaving him in just the black dress pants, shoes, and white shirt with the top few buttons undone, showing a bit of his solid pectorals. Tamura. Izuku called, waving hello. See? I told you we would meet again. You. Shigaraki scowled at him. He had seen what happened earlier that night on the television and finally started to put two and two together. So this is what you were up to. He eyed the gauntlet on the team's arm. The robots, the strategies, the information, it was all just one big diversion so you could build this. Yeah, it was. You're so smart, Tamura. Izuku smiled despite the older villain figuring it all out. I confess I was secretly building my ultimate device for over a year now. I was sick of living in a world where I was looked down upon for being quirkless, so I created this. Brandishing his left arm, he showed them. The Infinity Gauntlet, a device that grants me the greatest quirks this world has ever seen. To prove his point, he waved the gauntlet at the water and the group stared in awe as the ocean was split in half like some sort of biblical event. That's so cool. Toga gushed. Are you strong enough to take on All Might? Tamura asked. That was and still is their goal after all. No, not yet, Izuku sighed in disappointment. I was able to catch him by surprise tonight, and he held back against me. Also, my gauntlet isn't complete. Why did you call us? Dabi finally spoke up. He missed talking to Izuku. He was one of the few that shared the same ideals as the hero killer Stain, but wasn't an annoying fanboy about it like Spinner. Do you wish rejoin the league? I borrowed Himiko and I just wanted to get her back. The green-haired teen looked to their hand-covered leader. But I would like to work with you all again if that's okay. We can start a mutual partnership. If you need assistance, call me and I'll help, but I expect the same thing in return. Does that sound like a good offer? Truthfully, he just wanted to borrow specific members of the league. It's a good offer, Tamura. Kirajiri spoke from over his master's shoulder. You've seen the power he now has. It does sound good, too good. Shigaraki glared at him. Yet you still haven't told me what you hope to accomplish with this master cheat code of yours. Izuku just grinned at him. My goal is simple. I wish to defeat All Might, not just simply kill. I want to expose him to the world. Show everyone the lies he told. Then once his world has been torn down, I'll build a better one on top of it. Izuku looked out at the water towards the rising sun peeking over the horizon. That will be my revenge on All Might for giving me false hope in this wretched world and then snatching it away. Destroy his world and make a new one, Dabi summarized. I kind of like the sound of that. Alright, you have yourself a deal. Shigaraki finally agreed to a proper alliance. But don't ever try to manipulate me again. Are you still upset about that? I used you to accomplish my goals and you used me to accomplish your goals. That's how everything works, Izuku explained. I don't mind being used. Himiko shouted. Don't start with that again, Izuku sighed, running a hand through his messy hair, muttering about crazy fangirls. Please take her away, she tried to cut me 3 times already. Kirajiri opened his warp gate and the league took their leave. Tamura Shigaraki glanced back at him one last time, noting how different Izuku was acting now that had power. Much more forward than the meat boy that used to work for him. When they were gone, Izuku went back to practicing with the Infinity Gauntlet. Then after an hour the package he was waiting for finally arrived. One of his handmade hover drones descended towards him. Part of the reason he toppled that building was not just to erase all evidence of his work and cover his retreat, but it was also to give this one single drone a window to escape with its cargo as it was programmed. Thank you, the drone's top opened up and out popped a vial containing a sample of blood. Izuku smiled as he held a small container filled with red liquid. Quirkless people like us can't be heroes. Isn't that right, All Might? He looked back out at the water. But I want to be something greater. The most powerful person in the world, who shapes it by his design. The gauntlet hummed with power. There's a word for that being. Using the reality stone he lifted up every piece of scrap and junk from the beach and levitated it out into the shore. Izuku quickly stacked it all together and began spelling out a word. Just 3 massive letters in the English alphabet, made from trash, and sitting in the water as a monument to his limitless power. G-O-D. Thanks for listening. Remember to check out the original work in the description.